Hello, Math 111 students. There's been a couple of you that have emailed me about this question, so I thought I would just go over an example of how to do this. This is from our homework assignment, section 3.4, and it's problem numbers. We're given two functions, f and m, and we're asked to talk about the domain of different ways of combining those functions. So the first one it asks is the domain of f of x over m of x. Before we can figure out the domain, we need to figure out what f of x over m of x looks like. So in this case, that's going to look like 1 over the square root of x over x squared minus 4. Okay? So a lot of people are a little rusty maybe on their fraction division, but what we really have here is we have a fraction in the numerator, and if we put this over 1, we have a fraction in the denominator. And remember, when you're dividing by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So we can change this to be 1 over the square root of x times 1 over x squared minus 4. And that gives us 1 over root x times the quantity x squared minus 4. All right, so the key thing about this is we need to make sure that we don't have anything in the denominator that's equal to 0. And we don't also have anything under the square root that is going to be negative. So there's quite a few things to keep track of here. So first of all, let's rule out any of our zeros, okay? So we know we cannot have, x equal to 0 is out, not in the domain, because that would be 1 over 0. Where does x squared minus 4 equal 0? Well, that's when x equals 2, or x equals to negative 2. So those guys are all out. No way. Can't have any of those. Out, out, out. Okay. So we've got the divided by 0 taken care of. The other thing we need to make sure we're looking at is we can't have the square root of x taking the square root of a negative number. So we can't have anything less than 0 as well. So for the square root of x part, we need x to be greater than or equal to 0 for this domain. Okay? So let's put that all together. Well, we can't have anything less than 0 or we'll take the square root of x. So we're going to be x greater than 0 is where we're going to start. But we also make sure we don't include 0 because that would make the denominator 0. So that means we have x now greater than 0. Check, we took care of that. And we can't also have x equal to 2 because that would make x squared minus 4 equal to 0. So we need x to be greater than 0, and we can't have it be equal to 2. So the way we write that is 0 to 2 with parentheses, so we don't include the endpoints, union 2 to infinity. All right? That way we're not dividing by 0, so we don't have 0, 2, or negative 2 as part of the domain. And we're greater than 0 for the square root part. All right, let's try the next one. F of m of x. Again, the first place to start is let's compute f of m of x. So that's going to be f of x squared minus 4. And so that's going to be 1 over the square root of x squared minus 4. All right? So let's see if we can figure out what the domain of that thing is going to be. Well, if we look at x squared minus 4, we know we cannot have that be a negative number. And we cannot have the denominator also be equal to 0. Those are the two things that we always have to check. So if we think about x squared minus 4, if we have x equal to 2 or negative 2, again, that's going to be a problem. These guys are out of the domain, right? Out of the domain. We can't have them in the domain because if we put either of those in, that's going to be 0. Square root of 0 is 0, and we're going to be dividing by 0. So we can't have those in the domain. And we also need x squared minus 4 to be greater than or equal to 0, so we can take the square root of it. When is x squared minus 4 greater than or equal to 0? Well, there's a couple ways you can figure this out, but I think the easiest is just to look at the graph of x squared minus 4. You can look it up in Desmos or any graphing calculator. It looks like this, right? This is the 1, 0 at negative 2, and here's the 0 at 2. It's going to be greater than 0 anywhere to the left of negative 2 or to the right of positive 2. So the domain of f of m of x is going to be minus infinity to 2 union to infinity. All right, we need it to not be equal to negative, oh, sorry, that was meant to be negative 2. We need it to not be equal to negative 2 or 2, so I use parentheses for those guys, not square brackets. And we need it to be to the left to be positive or to the right of 2 to be positive. And the final problem, let's see if I can make some spaces. M of f of x. It's not letting me scroll down for some reason here. Let's see if I can scroll down. First, we need to find m of f of x. And that's m of, I already kind of forgot what f of x was, 1 over root x. And so that's equal to, everywhere I see an x, I can now put 1 over root x. 1 over root x squared minus 4. All right, let's look at this one. Same two things we're going to check. We're going to make sure we don't divide by 0, and we're going to make sure we don't take the square root of a negative number. So when would this make the denominator 0? Well, x cannot be equal to 0, right? That would make the denominator 0. And we need this x to be greater than or equal to 0, otherwise we'll be taking the square root of a negative number. Put those guys together, we just need x strictly greater than 0, so the domain is 0 to infinity. I hope this was helpful.